Well, I'll be brutally honest. I actually think the producers and yourself, Tony, ought to be ashamed of yourself for giving him a platform. The issue at heart is the ABC chose to give this person a platform on live television, precisely as Paul was outlining. And people can have their own views about issues, and no one is calling for this individual to be silenced or censored. No one has called for that.
I think the minister can. Just a qualifying point. I think the minister on the night did say he would quite like to see him deported from the country.
That's amazing.
He did, but that does not silence or censor him.
I'm
not sure how it does. I mean, he's still welcome to speak.
I'm simply making the point there that that view would be seen by some as being out of order as well. That a citizen should be expelled from the country.
Well, and the minister has expressed himself. I'm bringing it back to the root of the issue, which is what the ABC did. It chose to give him a live platform to express a view. It is bad because it denied the opportunity for somebody who is sensible and rational and credible to actually talk about the serious points around citizenship that exist in Australia and around those laws, which I have myself expressed genuine concerns about. But for then the ABC to turn it into some sort of free speech issue and try and project it as though the ABC had made just a simple error of judgment and invoke the idea that people that this was akin to the Charlie Hebdo massacres, I found laughable and contemptuous of the substance of the issue at heart. And I thought it was actually a tragedy that the Mark Scott chose to go and do it that way and actually, in essence, mock the memory of those people and what they actually stood and died for. And to be brutally honest, Tony, when I first came on this program in 2008, it was an environment where we had serious policy discussion. Too often these days it's caught up with gotcha moments and snide remarks designed to get extra attention in the news cycle. And that is what that was, and it blew back on this show and to its detriment.
I think this is not an issue of free speech, as Mark Scott pretended last week. This was a serious editorial mistake by the ABC. Media organisations have got to be very careful about who they put up in lights, about who they give a platform to. And it would have been possible to have a lot of other Muslims in the audience raising these sorts of issues. The ABC chose not to do that. I find it extraordinary that we're being told today that he would not have been asked on the program if people had known what he said in terms of his sexist and misogynist past and the threats he'd made about female journalists. We're told that that would have ruled him out of the program, but the fact that he had been prosecuted with terrorism, the fact that he had admitted that he threatened Australian officials and wanted to kill them, the fact that he'd served time, that he had a weapons arsenal, that he was conducting a campaign to publicise jihad, nonetheless, that's okay. Well, it's not okay. It's not okay in terms of the ABC taking a decision about who's going to appear on Q&A and who is going to confront a government minister about citizenship policy.
Paul, can I just interrupt you there? Back in 2012 September, your own paper ran a story about Mallah headlined "Rebel Urges Muslims to Wage a Jihad of Peace." Now, I imagine you're aware of the content of that story.
I'm aware of that story,
yeah.
But that story is a separate issue from giving him a platform on this program. As I said...
Can I just sorry, briefly, can I just quickly go to a point that was in the story? So the story in your paper said his experience going to Syria had showed that hate and violence were self-defeating. The more you fight, the more you lose, says Mallah in the story. The more you have hatred, this anger, the more you feel victimised. Now, would it have been wrong of the program makers to take that into account when forming a judgment about him?
No, I don't think it would have been wrong, but I'd make 2 points about what you've just said. I'm very well aware that the most effective form of persuading people against going to Iraq and Syria is to have jihadists who have repented and to expose them to people who want to go to Iraq and Syria. I'm very well aware that this is an enormously effective tool to persuade people against it. But this is not why he was on the program. He was on the program not to have, as far as I'm concerned, not to have a proper debate about the issue. This was a gotcha moment. This was a tabloid gotcha moment. He was picked out to embarrass the government on this issue, and in that sense, he had the wrong background. The fact that he'd repented, I think, is very good. But I don't think that excuses the choice made at the time.
Let's get a quick response from Anne Ali on that very question.
So what I'm hearing is that he's good enough for your paper, but he's not good enough for Q&A. That's what I'm hearing here.
No. Our paper didn't put him up on lights because we're not able to do that the way the ABC did on this program and counterpose him against the government to embarrass the government over citizenship law.
But it was the government's response that created the ongoing thing.
It was the exchange.
Had the minister, or the parliamentary secretary, had he responded in a manner where he actually answered Zaki's question, I doubt that the situation would have been blown out of proportion as it has been. And that's why I say it was a missed opportunity, and why I think Australians deserve better to hear about these issues in a manner that is free from political grandstanding.
OK, Lawrence KRAUSS is trying to jump in. I also want to hear from
because I came
Wilson
in from outside. I have to say, in terms of make a platform for this guy, it seemed to me the government has made the platform. I wouldn't have known who he was. I wouldn't have heard about him if I hadn't arrived in this country and seen all this stuff about this guy. And then I went and watched the question, and the question was kind of silly and innocuous. In terms of embarrassing the government, it seemed to me the government did a good job of embarrassing itself. The response of that minister was ridiculous. Moreover, I mean, I wrote a book about something from nothing. It seems to me that you proved it's possible. And the last thing I want to say is some of his views, which I've looked at since then, are clearly despicable. But in a society, we have to be willing to have discussions about despicable views. And I was amazed. I was on this program, speaking of despicable views, with Fred Nile a few years ago, and no one wrote headline stories saying that a hateful person who has not misogynistic views but anti-gay views was allowed on a program. He was allowed. We had a discussion, a relatively polite discussion, but at least it raised, in my mind, the ridiculousness of his opinions, and a reasonable discussion could have raised the ridiculousness of this guy's opinion.
OK.